what's up? I'm back. My hair is kind of crazy right now. I don't know what's happening with my bangs. I'm actually kind of hoping that maybe my curly hair is returning, because I've noticed that my bangs are a little bit more curly now, like they're not as straight, and then my hair in the back is a little bit more curly as well. And I don't know, I'm not gonna get my hopes up, because it would make me really sad if I thought my hair was gonna get curly and then it didn't, because my hair used to be super curly, and then last year around like summertime, beginning of summertime, like my hair just slowly started to lose curl, and I don't really know why. I started smoking nicotine around that time. I don't know if that's a possibility, or it was also the stress that I was going through, but it could also be hormones, because my family's had curly hair and just lost it before, but it's usually after pregnancy. So to be honest, I don't really know, but I miss it. I miss my curly hair every day, and I also miss my long hair every day, because I cut it on an impulse, and I think about it all the time, and I'm like, why did I do that? But it's fine. And I actually, besides my little hair ramble I went on, I want to talk about like a new discovery that I made. So in my like past like couple of videos, I think like for a while now, I've talked about how I felt kind of stagnant in life. One second, I have a little bit of tea here. It's like wild berry tea, and it doesn't have caffeine in it. It was kind of like a toss-up for me. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this or not, but it's alright. And I put some honey in it too, just because I have like a sore throat from smoking cigarettes so much. So I'm hoping this tea helps, and it is, thank God. Anyway, so I talked with my cousin on the phone yesterday for like 2 hours about where I'm at in life, and it was like so shockingly similar, because she's kind of like going through all of the same things right now. Like, we're struggling to get a job, like we're feeling like depressed, but like we're not sure if depressed is kind of like the word for it, and just feeling like we know that we should do things, and like we even want to do those things, but we just like can't. And there's like a whole cycle of apathy, and right now I'm stuck in a guilt and frustration stage for feeling guilty and frustrated that I am apathetic and also disengaged. And it's kind of like this toss-up, but then the next event of the cycle would be getting triggered again, which would lead to the cycle of apathy, where you kind of like care so much that you almost don't care at all. That was the original question I asked ChatGPT when we were having that conversation, because I was like, listen, like maybe because we're both in the exact same boat, we can try and help each other out of it. And so I started using ChatGPT as a resource, like I always do, and it talked about how apathy can be a coping mechanism, and I was like, tell me more about that. And it explained the cycle of apathy to me, and I was like, wow, that really resonates with me, and I recognized every stage of the cycle of apathy. I would get my computer right now, but it's dead, and that seems like too much work, or else I would show it to you guys. But anyway, this is kind of just for me anyway. I was thinking of like journaling today, but I was like, I'm just gonna film a video because it's kind of easier. But yeah, so we kind of looked into it more and asked, like, is apathy a form of healing? Like, that's what she wanted to know. And while it can feel like a form of healing, like your mind kind of just goes on like do not disturb mode, and you just kind of shut off, like it's almost like a resting period where like your brain just stops. But it's not truly healing, because you're not only stopping those overwhelming or painful emotions, you're also prohibiting yourself from feeling enjoyment and happiness. And I've kind of recognized that lately too. Like, all of my emotions are just kind of muted, and I've been kind of frustrated, because I'm like, oh, maybe it's just like this transitionary stage of life before the next stage of life, and I just am where I am, and that's just how life goes. But then when I started to look into it yesterday, I was like, no, this actually really resonates with me. And it's because subconsciously becoming apathetic is like a survival response, kind of. Like, you, like I said, you care so much that you kind of lose the ability to care like at all. And that's, I feel like, what happened, because I feel like I was trying to put together the pieces like around like the days before that, or like last week, because I was starting to get frustrated. I'm like, why am I here? I don't want to be doing nothing, but I am. And so I started to kind of like trying to give myself that empathy by reflecting on everything that happened in 2024, and realized I went through a lot. I went through a lot of things. And now that I've found the cycle of apathy, I feel like I found that missing piece, and it makes sense because in 2024, I was running from feeling and processing and living and being a part of everything. And then I finally realized I can't avoid this forever. I have to. And it's like I cared like so much, but I was just so blind to my own actions because I did things out of necessity. I purely did them for survival. And so from an outside perspective, I was selfish. I only cared about myself. And not in survival as in like, like I'm making it day to day. Like I've always been very lucky and very privileged, like physically, but in a sense that I was losing my ego. I was losing my sense of self. And so I was just grappling onto any lifeline that I could without reflection or sincerity for others or the role that things played in my life, my relationship with them. And I just like was focused on feeding this ego, these parts of me that I was losing. And I became a person that was not me, that did not align with me, that felt selfish and did not line up with my values as a person. And then, it finally caught me. I met this older man. I've talked about him a lot at a crossroads, and I realized, fuck, I gotta feel these things. I gotta stop, and I gotta process this shit, or else it's going to eat me alive. And I'm just going to feel like shit all the time. I'm gonna go into addiction. I'm gonna kill myself. I'm gonna do all this shit. And so I realized I gotta feel this. So I did. And I started to shuffle through it and started to process it and started to reflect on it and started to feel guilt and empathy and remorse and all these complicated things that I was pushing off. Like everything was just overwhelming me. Everything was on top of me that I had been pushing off for months and months and months. The grief and like just so much loss, so much guilt. And I did that for a while. I went to Hawaii, and that was like a nice place to kind of recenter, but I was also feeling a lot down there too. And I didn't really realize it. I thought maybe I'm just in the stage of life, but no, it makes sense because I was running from all of this, and then it all hit me like a fucking freight train, and I started to feel all of it at once. And now I'm here, and my brain subconsciously shut off because it was feeling way too much. It was feeling overwhelmed from all of the shit that hit me that I hadn't originally processed in 2024. So that's where I'm at, and it makes sense why it's really hard for me to fix my sleeping schedule. And also I learned something about nicotine I'll talk about in a little bit. Smoking nicotine, wanting to hang out with my friends, sustain relationships, go do things that I enjoy, get a job. Like so they didn't get back to me on ABS, but whatever. I'm not too interested in that right now. I feel like that's kind of a big priority because it's a lot more serious than getting like a food related job or like going into the food service industry or going into retail or something. And so I don't feel like I'm quite ready for that, I guess, or maybe I just don't mind kind of putting it off a little bit. But I do have an interview with Beans and Brews on Wednesday at 12, so I'm very excited for that because I fucking need a job. But anyway, so that's why I've struggled to do all these things. Wanting to take care of myself is because my brain shut off because it was like, this is too much. And now I'm here. So there are a few things I want to talk about before I get into how I'm handling all of this shit. So with nicotine, at my therapy appointment last Wednesday, I realized, because I was like, why do people get addicted? And it's like, obviously there's a lot of reasons, but I needed my therapist's perspective, and she started telling me why. And she was like, I realized my self-harm and my relationship with eating was an addiction to me, and I knew that. That's not new. But that nicotine replaced that because of course, like I had like kind of self-harmed or struggled with like eating a little bit, like, after I started smoking nicotine, but I declined like rapidly. And that was for other reasons too. Like I knew that it was just time to stop, self-harming. I was like, this really is not doing anything better for me. And I just realized the consequences and like, this is shitty. Like I'm sick of being in the cycle. I'd been self-harming for over 3 years and I was fucking sick of it. And so I realized I needed a change. And with eating, I just had felt so bad about my body because when I was 15, my first experiences with sex were really abusive because my freshman boyfriend, he played that game before where he manipulated girls, and he would say really bad things about my body in front of his friends. And so it made me really insecure, and he was just overall physically abusive. He would coerce me into sex, and belittle me, gaslight me, cheated on me. And it wasn't a long relationship, but it was my first experiences anything sexual and any romantic relationship, pretty much. I mean, I had a girlfriend before that, and like we'd kissed and stuff, but it wasn't anything like what it was like with this guy. And being a 15-year-old and feeling like I couldn't talk to my grandpa about it because I didn't want him to think less of me, because like we never really talked about those things, and I was like, it's my grandpa, I don't want to talk about sex with my grandpa. So I kind of just bottled it all in, and then it built this, like, you know. And I also started to kind of self-harm me because of him and my friend group. They were all doing it, so they normalized the behavior. And then like I started, you know, eating less and then binge eating because like, you know, and it was just this back and forth. And then I struggled with, I guess, bulimia, like not technically enough to like lose weight. Like I guess the actual term for it would be disordered eating, because I never had an eating disorder, because the criteria is so dumb. Like I get what the point is of having a diagnosis for eating disorders, but also I think that it can discredit a lot of people, and especially when you're in that competitive mindset with things like self-harm and eating problems and body dysmorphia. People feel like they need to take it to that extreme, or they need to hit the critical low in order for their struggle to be valid. And so obviously I've sought out forums or communities online that talk about these things to help me feel less alone. And also it's kind of like when people, and that's a really tricky thing too, is when people talk about eating disorders specifically, or suicide or anything like that, it's kind of like, not suicide as much, but definitely eating disorders, it's like you're letting in the back door. Like in order to talk about those things, it's almost like you're inviting someone into that space and kind of telling them how to do it without even wanting to do that. And that's one thing that I've seen a lot, is like people, when they talk about it, it's a very vulnerable thing. And if you get too much into details, like you have to watch your discretion a lot, because people can hear those things and be, oh, so this is how I do it, this is how I turn out like them. And it's just, it doesn't work that way. And just is this very competitive mindset. And so people feel like I need to be diagnosed as anorexic for it to be valid. I need to be diagnosed with bulimia for it to be valid. And I don't think that's true. I think that obviously there is a reason why they have that criteria for diagnosis. But if you're, I don't know who the fuck would watch this, honestly, but if you are struggling with any of that stuff, you don't need to be diagnosed. You don't need to hit your critical lows in order for you to get better, in order for you to get help. And I know that, and there's this stigma with self-harm. I've even had people tell me this, because I have a lot of scars, saying that people do it for attention. That's not the only reason. For me, I didn't do it inherently for attention. I did it because I believed that I deserved it. I kind of had kept instilling this belief in myself that the only way I can be alive is if I inflict pain on myself, because I deserve to be in pain. But also, why is it a bad thing if people are doing it for attention? If someone is hurting themselves for attention, they need help. Like, that's a sign. Like, yes, they need help. And obviously it's not the best way to go about it, but why people hurt themselves and do those things in such extremes is because no one is listening to them, or they feel like no one will listen to them. And at the end of the day, we really just need to be kind to each other. That's what it comes down to. This has been a whole rant, but anyway, so I struggled with self-harm and I struggled with eating, and I didn't even know I kind of replaced those things. And I didn't, of course no one really intentionally gets addicted to shit, but I went to pick up a weed pen and I picked up a vape pen, and here I am, story of my fucking life. And I had kind of stopped self-harming and doing those things around the same time. And I feel like why, like for me or whatever, me and my boyfriend have talked about this, because like obviously he doesn't like me smoking nicotine, like it's bad for you. And I kind of told him, like, I thought about it or whatever, and I was like, I don't feel like I can just quit nicotine to quit nicotine. I have to do it with intention, because if I just quit it to quit it, the next time I get access to it, I'm gonna do it. And or I'll just replace it with another addiction, possibly a more unhealthy addiction than nicotine. And so I'm kind of just at a standstill with that right now, but I also feel like it's kind of my last landline to my ego, like who I used to be, I guess. Not that I used to smoke nicotine, but it's a part of my ego, you know. It's not like holy, I guess, like it's a sinful thing, and not in like how the Bible kind of, I guess kind of how the Bible does describe it, but not like the literal meaning that people take like heaven and hell out of, but my meaning of what God is. And being holy is just closer to yourself, closer to connection, closer to humanity as a whole, while being wicked or sinful are things that reject yourself, things that harm yourself, things that harm others, in my mind at least. So not something like being gay is a sin, but rather abusing yourself or treating yourself poorly is a sin, in my mind. That's just how I choose to see it. And then another thing that I kind of wanted to talk about that's important in my apathetic journey, in a sense, is, like, I've been thinking about my ex lately, and it was a guy that I dated for 1.5 years, and I've had to, I swear to God, let him go 1,000,000 times over. It's nothing new, but, like, I don't know, it's just kind of caused some doubt lately, I guess, and I've done a lot of reflecting, used ChatGPT as a resource and wrote about it, and kind of realized that, and talked to my cousin about it too, just that I don't actually want him, but it's because he played such a significant part in my life, and I was so attached, my ego was so attached to him that it's really just hard for me to let go. Like, I'm a sentimental person, but something has to be literally, like, ingrained in, like, my heart and my skin and, like, my bones for it to be sentimental to me. But once it is, I hold on to it with all of my fucking life, and that's kind of what happened with him. And I realized that, of course, I don't want him back, but why I don't feel like that story or that chapter is kind of complete is because I need to find that inner peace and emotional resolution within myself. And so I've talked to, ChatGPT about how to go about those things, and I've talked to my boyfriend about it because I feel like that's really important to keep him updated on these things, even if they're harder conversations or they might even hurt each other's feelings. Like, the truth is always better, and I feel like if you speak about things and you let them see the light, then there's not this shame surrounding it, and so you don't feel the need to hide it, and you don't treat it like a shameful action, which kind of feeds it. Like keeping shame in the darkness just feeds it and makes it spiral into something that it wasn't even originally to begin with. And a way that I'm going to do this is I'm actually going to write a letter tonight to him saying everything I feel the need to say, not worrying about anything, just allowing my mind to flow onto the page, and then taking it to a church parking lot that's symbolic to me, because there's some church parking lots that are really symbolic to me, like where I asked him to be my boyfriend, and yeah, just a lot of memories there. And another one that's kind of near his house, but I try to stray away from those places just because I feel like it's not good for me to hold on to those places, but I feel like in this case scenario it's good. So I'm gonna write a letter and step outside and read it out loud and allow myself to feel things, and then I'm just going to burn it or do whatever I see fit with it, anything that is not holding on to it. And I'll probably have to do things a lot like this, but in terms of moving forward with that, nicotine is kind of just on the back burner right now. When I get a job, of course, my nicotine usage will go down, just because I don't want to go to work smelling like cigarettes. That's not very professional. So yeah, how I get out of the cycle of apathy is I start to slowly introduce feeling to myself. So making this video is actually one way to go about it, feeling connected without feeling overwhelmed or allowing those emotions to come back so strong in a way that it's painful. So making a video, making a voice memo, just talking to myself, journaling, all of these things can help me express myself. A lot of it isn't about delivering those things to my ex, for example, or delivering it to even me, but it's just to expressing it. It's allowing it to get out of you and into the universe, so it stops suffocating you from the inside out, because that's what it feels like. It feels like I'm dying on the inside, and that's not a new feeling. When I was experiencing ego death, and I was like, it was literally so excruciating. It's like when I had to go home and I had to sit alone and I had to allow myself to feel everything that I was pushing off, I would just lay there completely still, and it felt like I was legitimately dying from the inside out. Like, ego death is no joke. I was losing myself, and I feel like that was a really traumatic process. Like, how could it not be to lose? Because I didn't even know who I was to begin with before I started dating my ex, and then everything happened with him, and I lost him, and I lost everything all at once, and I lost myself. It's like, how can that not be traumatic? Like, I had to figure out who I was. I had to be someone other than like the in-between or the absence of or nothing, because that's what I felt like. I literally had to build myself from seemingly nothing. I had to turn the belief that I am inherently nothing into I am inherently worthy, and that takes a lot of work, and especially for how fast I did it, because I would say I'm emotionally intelligent, and as soon as I learn something, I implement it. I'm really good with that, and so I implemented it so quick that I think it burnt me out. Anyway, expressing myself is a huge part of it. Like I said, writing the journal, learning ways to let go without contacting my ex clearly. I'm also blocked, so I did it. I totally understand why I'm blocked. If I could literally do one thing, if I could see him, I would not approach him first, but the one fantasy I have in my mind when I think about it is just getting down on my knees and looking him in the eyes and saying, I am so fucking sorry for what I did, because I am fucking sorry. I fucked up. And that's the hardest part about me not feeling like I got that emotional resolution, is that for all that I did and for how long we were together and how strong our relationship was, and not just the fact that we were partners, but the fact that we were best friends and companions, and then I go and I hurt him in ways that I can't even imagine. It would hurt me if, he did them while we had just broken up, like just barely broken up. I was sleeping with a bunch of guys and he knew about it, and it was like, I was not being discreet about it, like I was being honest, but like, that's so fucked. And I didn't realize it because I was going through this crazy episode, which doesn't excuse it, but I was losing my mind. I felt crazy. I was losing myself without him, and I was like, I'm changing, but I don't know why, and I blamed it on changing because I didn't have a greater understanding. But then months later to realize, oh my god, wait, I fucked up, because I didn't even realize until everything was said and done. And I sent him a text saying, hey, I know I never said it, but I'm sorry. And I sent him a long text, and then, we talked about it later, and every time that text him, I just said, I'm sorry, and thank you for everything. And he forgave me, but despite it being over text, like, and that's so emotionally mature of him, like, I would not blame him if he never forgave me, but he's like, life's too short to hold a grudge, and I'm like, that's really emotionally mature of you, and I respect that about him. But for everything to have happened the way that it did, and for us to have that strong of a connection, to be together that long, and for the apology to be over text just feels really undignified for me. And I wish that it was a conversation that we could have had in person, but I understand how difficult that would be, not only for me, but like especially him. Like that makes sense, you know what I mean? It's not even an option. It's just something that I like to think about, is being able to show him how sorry I am in actions, and show him that I'm not that person anymore. And maybe it's a sense of validation that I crave to, further the belief that I am not that girl that hurt him. But it's also just, I feel like that empathy in me that's returned once I gained that self-awareness and stopped blaming myself and started holding myself accountable, that I just want to show him, like, I can be accountable, and like, I'm so sorry, because he deserves to know that, even though it's all said and done and he's moved on and he's blocked me and shit. And so it's really, that's the sign that it's not about him, but that it's about me, and it's about me learning how to have the ability to let go and to move on, because that's one thing I really struggle with everything. My legs are falling asleep. I'm like on my knees right now. But yeah, that's happened with like my family, like all the trauma that's happened, me holding on to it. My relationship with my dad, my relationship with my grandpa, the blame that I've placed, grieving, a lot of grief, self-harm, addictions, everything like that. And especially this was kind of the most recent event, so it makes sense, I guess. But I wonder if after, because if I haven't processed this stuff, you know what I mean? Like, I wonder what I'm going to have to process after this, like the other relationships, or will I have any loose ends to tie up after this? But that's for later. I already feel better now that I'm talking about this and I got all this off my mind, and I'm sure that, oh my god, my legs, when your legs like fall asleep, you're on the toilet for too long or something, and then they get all like tingly and shit, and it feels weird. Ugh. Anyway, yeah, writing that letter will definitely help, and if you watch this, I want to say thank you. This is obviously more for me, but if you did watch this and you're able to relate at all, thank you so much. And I hope that this could have helped anybody who watched it in some way. I don't even know. Anyway, I'll keep you guys updated. Thanks for everything, guys. Also, what the fuck is going on with my hair? I look like an emo. Okay, bye.